Hi, welcome to Powerhouse. Joining us today is Bianca Bustamante. Welcome. You're a 16-year-old rising star. You're going to be joining the FIA Girls on Track Rising Star Shootout very soon at the end of the October. Just really excited to talk to you. Maybe start from the beginning. How did you get interested in racing and karting? How old were you? And what's the first impression that led you to kind of continued excitement and passion?
Well, my dad was actually, he was a carter in our family. So everything I learned, it just came from him. And the passion kind of started from him. So it kind of went to me as well. And when I was younger, I actually started driving at the age of 3 when he first got me a baby cart. And it started ever since then. He introduced me to karting. He made me fall in love with the sport and encouraged me to move forward. And eventually I picked it up myself, thought of racing as something I really want to do competitively.
Like, what's your very first memory of it?
Well, the very first memory actually is when I watched my dad race for the first time. Like racing for us is like a family event. And whenever my dad would race, he would bring my mom, he would bring the whole family with him. And when I was around 1 year old, he brought me to the track when he had a race and I saw him win. And I was holding his trophy during the podium ceremony. And I kind of thought that I wanted to win a lot of trophies like him too. And honestly, I think when I realized that I found what I wanted to do in life.
Oh, wow. So very, very early. It's great motivation, I suppose, like just kind of having the whole family participate in it and holding the trophy. That's good. I have a 4-year-old son, so I'm trying to take notes here as well.
Yes.
And then so from there, you had the experience of it, like you said, at 3, starting karting. When you're so young, it's kind of easy to also give up, right? So are there like situations, and I'm sure along the way too, but when you're particularly when you're very young, do you remember like maybe falling off or having some small accidents, but thinking that maybe this is not for me, or you've always just kind of power through?
Actually, there was a lot of instances or accidents that I had to experience when I was younger, since of course I'm a kid and I barely had any control over the cart. But I've had a few crashes there and there, but in the end, I always found ways to get back to the cart the following day or just push myself to go further. And I guess that's what happens when you have so much passion for something. Even though you fail most of the times, you get back stronger each time.
Yeah, that's amazing. And to have that drive and the determination, right? I mean, you just, again, thinking back as a kid, there's a lot of times and a lot of
Yeah.
things that I've kind of like, okay, well, that's it, like say piano, right? And, take it a few years and just got, okay, I'm good enough. I don't want to go any further, right? So, but as you said, it's that passion. I'm sure you can feel it. And then regardless of how difficult it is, you kind of power through. How old did you start competing, I guess? Or is it something that's a continuous thing for karting?
I started competing professionally at the age of 6, and that's when I had my very first national race, and I won. And then my family, well, they were very supportive and they were happy about it. That's why we decided that after that national series, I would end up competing international abroad in Macau by the end of that year. And I won my very first international race that year, and that's kind of when we decided that if I'm really good at what I'm doing, then we're gonna push all out just so I can reach formula.
Wow. Okay. So that's determined fairly early on as well. So once you started racing and have the taste of the trophy, uh,
Yeah.
dad's, but
Ever
yours,
since I got it, I couldn't stop.
that's,
Every time I get a second, it'd be very sad for me.
well, talk about how you feel when you don't get the trophy. Like, what is that feeling, and how does it kind of further propel you?
Well, of course, I'd be very disappointed, especially when I do have the pace during the race weekends. I was very quick, but I'd make a mistake or I make a not very secure move, and that would, cost me the win. I'd often get sad or just mad of how I performed, but I'd always look up on the bright side and just realize that it's a learning curve for me since I'm still very young, and whatever I learn now or what I experience, I can always use it moving forward, and it works like a charm.
What are the main strengths, I guess, that you feel really helped you kind of do well in this field?
I think it's just because of how competitive I am. Like even outside of racing or just academics or anything that I take time on doing, I'd always want to do it competitively and not just for fun. And I think that what pushed me to, compete with boys, even though it's scary. And I just kept pushing myself that I can compete with anyone if I just work hard enough.
So you have the drive, and in terms of the actual skill, then do you feel what are the areas that early on you feel like, okay, I'm gonna do these, kind of really practice in these areas and kind of really help you round out the skill set to move forward?
Well, with a sport like racing, seat time is the key to getting faster with the lap times and or winning races, and that's why if you put in the hours and the laps of just driving and enhancing your skills, then you'll eventually get the speed, which is the hardest part actually, because apparently it took me 10 years just to get where I am now, and it's been very tough. I mean, even when I won, I still felt like I wasn't doing enough or I wasn't performing well enough, if I were to win now. But the following races, I'd meet up with someone who was much faster than I am. And instantly, I'd realize that there's so much to learn, even though I'm already at the top of my level.
Absolutely. I think that's a true in life, right? There's always so much more to learn, whether in your field or other things. So, and that's what's exciting, right? There's always something that you can work
Yeah,
on.
there's so much to learn. Yes. There's a lot of to improve on.
Right. So talk about like, having the track time. How often do you go as a kid, and like how old do you progressively get more and more track time, I guess?
Every day. Yeah. When I was a kid, I'd practice every day.
Wow. So even starting from 6 or earlier, I guess.
I started driving at the age of 3, and I kind of just started, going track times every day since I was 6. And
Wow.
yeah.
So it's not a day that you would want to miss. I mean, I'm sure you would miss it sometimes.
Yes, but of course, as I got faster and get the hang of the cart, I started doing less on track time because I realized that I needed to be more efficient with my training. So it shouldn't be every day, but the days that I do practice, I need to be, efficient.
Now, what is the biggest challenge so far through your journey?
Well, the biggest challenge would always be, of course, racing with other guys, just how competitive they can get. They won't let me pass or let me win easily. So I'd always have to go through a tough time just passing them. And I think that would kind of push me forward as well. And, I kind of wanted to race with them at an equal level without needing to be scared of anything. And the more that I got the experience, the less scared I was.
Absolutely. There's nothing to be scared of. Females are better in anything, right? So don't let them make
Yes.
you're not. And obviously you're proving them, that you are better. So you're like the only Asian person representing Asia this year. Well, tell us about that experience. Is that one of the biggest break so far running this program, and tell us what happens after.
So this shootout is an initiative by the Women in Motorsport that they started a year ago, and basically this is just giving a woman a chance to compete with other men because how difficult it is to get a seat in Formula cars or in motorsport. And because of this opportunity, we get to drive with men in Italian F4 for free. And if I do win this shootout, I get to drive with Ferrari, which is the junior program for the Formula One drivers. So if I progress further and further, I could eventually reach it there.
Maybe break it down even more. So this, you're competing in this program. So the best person or a group of people, right, will win the scholarship to the Ferrari Driving Academy. Then there's Formula 4, and then what are the kind of progression to Formula 1 then?
So there were actually over 70 drivers that sent their CV to the Women in Motorsport, and from 70 they cut it down to 14, and the top 14 will fly to France in Paul Ricard, and the 14 will have to go through a series of tests in karting and then in fitness or media and psychological exams, and the top 14 will be eliminated to just top 8, and then the top 8 will be driving the Formula 4 car in Paul Ricard. The Paul Ricard is the F1 track where Formula 1 drivers race in, and so just being there is like a dream come true. And of course, from top 8 they cut it down to top 4, and then the top 4 will be flying to Italy by November to train with Ferrari for around a week, I guess. And from then on, they will select one driver to race with them in Formula 4 next year.
And then after Formula 4, then kind of work towards F1, right?
Yeah, well, yes, that's the goal.
That sounds like a great goal. How long usually, I guess? I mean, I guess it's different for each person's career, but what is kind of the time frame, I guess? So once you hit Formula 4, you have to work towards F3, and then generally how many cycles, I guess, you have to go through to really work your way?
Well, of course, it all depends on financial and this availability of the seats, and just the chances and luck, even if you're driving good, if you can't afford to get into Formula 3, then you'd have to do another year in Formula 4, stop. I mean, just to make sure that you do get a seat in Formula 3, of course, you have to win every race in Formula 4 before you can move up and accumulate enough points to make it to F3. And from then on, of course, you need to go through a series of races again to prove yourself and win, of course, and then you make up the ladder to Formula 2, and then hopefully you reach Formula 1.
Sounds good. Obviously a lot of work, but also
Yes.
a clear path to that. So it's great that you can kind of keep that in your mind, right? And just kind of work towards that. What are some of your kind of usual training routine and any pre-game routine as well to keep yourself like really focused?
Well, I think motorsport, it's very physical. Karting, I karted for like 10 years, and even now I still feel like I'm still so weak, even with all those experiences, just because of how physical it can get. And that's why I work out almost every other day. And my workout routines consist of CrossFit, bodybuilding, a lot of core training and neck training. And of course, aside from physical stuffs, I also need to work on my mental, like, my psychological factor in racing, because of how much pressure racers or athletes get in their competitions. The races, just the pressure I get from the team, from everyone else, and competing with men, and it can get very tough. And of course, if I don't perform well, it gets even worse. That's why I always try to stay positive each time and work on my mental health.
And right before the game, what are some are you the type that want to just kind of stay focused
I
on
pray.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah.
I pray a lot, yes. Ask for guidance and for help, and hopefully it's a safe race.
Also, to touch upon, a bit on competing with men. Obviously, that's, either female or male, but there's got to be also benefits to be female. Is it lighter? Does that help? Like, what are the kind of key things as well, right?
Well, like, motorsport is actually one of the few sports that they allow men and women to compete in the same field. And that's why everything we're driving, from the track, from the equipment, from the car, it's all equal. So even though I'm a woman, I don't get to have like other things that make it easier for me. So what they're driving, I'm driving as well. That's why I love motorsport so much, just because of how they're giving equal chances to every driver. I feel like we're all equal when we do drive at the track.
Along with training routine and also the pre-game mindset, what are kind of some of your strategies? Is that something we could tell us? Or, you don't want to give away too much. Some key strategies, or just that set you apart from other competitors?
Well, I think because being a woman, I'm kind of more patient compared to other men. I kind of think my moves very thoroughly. Just, even with my academic, I'm quite sharp, I guess. And I think that's an advantage I always use when I'm driving, just because everything happens so quick when you're racing. You can be crashing or you can be going for a win, and a lot of things, you can go from first to last. And it's those quick moves, or those quick instances that matters the most in racing. You need to always be sharp, you need to be quick on your feet, and you need to make decisions very fast. And I think that's an advantage I always try to use. My brain, it works kind of fast, and as well as my driving, and I use that to my advantage moving forward, and it works very well.
That's great. And what else motivates you to keep racing?
What motivates me is, of course, reaching Formula 1, because that's my dream. But I also get motivation from other racers like Niki Lauda, which is my idol in Formula 1, just because of how encouraged he was in pursuing motorsport and pursuing his dreams. He was very smart as well. He was very decisive, and he was a very good driver. Even though he suffered a lot of crashes and incidents, he didn't let that stop his dreams. And that's what I'm trying to be.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's great role model. So aside from racing, do you have hobbies, fun things you do? What are other
Yes, I actually draw as well. I'm an artist, and I'm into architecture and engineering. So I
Wow.
always thought that if I can't be the driver, I'll just be the engineer.
Wow, that's amazing. So you must be well versed with all the parts of the car as well, right? So if you're interested in engineering, that's
Yes.
aspect. Wow. And is that what also got you interested in engineering, architecture? Yeah, how did you get interested in kind of the art aspect of it then?
Well, just because ever since I was young, I kind of like to draw a lot, and drawing kind of releases my creativity, and makes me feel free and doing the things I like or drawing the things that I want. And with engineering, yeah, I kind of moved to engineering just because of how much I wanted to understand the parts of the cars and all the technical things.
That's amazing. So well versed in so many different areas. I think you definitely have super amazing career, whether in racing or in, you know, the other professions. Now, along the lines of challenge, but along the way, I'm sure there's a lot of naysayers or other distractions. Now, what are some of your strategies of dealing with those?
I try to not think of the haters or whatever the other people are saying. Often I just keep my head down and focus on the race, or just keep my mind clear, focus on what matters the most, which is of course winning. And I've always realized that your performance is the best equalizer. You know, people can't judge you or anything if you're doing well, and if you're doing well, then that's the only thing that matters.
Absolutely. Amazing. Kind of keep that focus, right? Keeping that final goal in mind, that dream. What are some advice for young aspiring racers that want to get into the field or thinking about it or switching into the field, maybe at a later age, considering maybe like late teens or early 20s type?
There's a lot of racing enthusiasts out there, and I've always just said that I did it the same way I think everyone else did it. You know, if you have the passion for something, you always find ways to get into it. And there wasn't a no way for me. And like, there wasn't a point in my life where I accepted that I couldn't race anymore and all that stuff. And just because of how much I loved racing, I always find ways. And if you have the passion for something, you can always build the discipline and put in the hours, and eventually you'll get there.
Awesome advice. And one last thing, we were talking earlier, and you're sitting on a simulator, right? So I do have
Yes.
a question, like, so if you're not on track, is that something? So you constantly still like to practice and kind of feeling like you're on the track. So do you practice a lot on the simulator?
Yes, I practice almost every day. You know, with the pandemic that's happened, it was the kind of only thing that connected me to motorsport or to racing, because of how restricted everything was. I couldn't go to the track because I was underage, and I couldn't do a lot of things. I couldn't drive, you know. It was hard financially to put everything all together at the track. You know, you needed a mechanic, you needed a crew, you needed a car. And at times like this, it wasn't very accessible for us. That's why we resorted to getting a simulator. It's actually very fun. I mean, it feels very close to reality. Almost feels like I'm driving the real thing. And there's actually a lot of races online that is closer to real racing. And like the Z Challenger, they're holding a very lots of series in racing and sim racing actually, and esports.
Yeah, that's great that you got to have a way to practice at home and be able to kind of hone in the skills while you can't go on the racetrack. So technology is amazing nowadays. I'm sure with like
Yes.
VR, AR, you'll feel even more immersive and real. Cool. That's amazing. Thank you so much for chatting with me, and good luck with your
Thank you
program.
so much for having me.
Yes, thank you.